We spend, I mean, a massive amount of our waking lives trying to figure out exactly who we are.
Yeah.
It's like this obsession that drives almost everything we do.
Oh, absolutely.
We take these personality tests to find out if we're an AJ or like an Enneagram type 4.
Yeah.
We meticulously curate our social media profiles to project this very specific aesthetic. And we even swab our cheeks, send our dean off to the labs to see what geographical coordinates we can claim as our heritage.
Right, downright. Looking for data points.
Exactly, data points.
Okay.
We build these incredibly elaborate, like, defensive narratives around our careers, our political affiliations, our past traumas. We're just fundamentally obsessed with locking down our identity.
Yeah, we really crave a fixed set of data points. Pinning ourselves down to a specific measurable identity, it feels like putting an anchor in a very chaotic ocean.
Yeah, totally.
We build this scaffolding out of our jobs, our relationships, our memories, and we just stand in the middle of it and say, okay, this structure is me. I am safe in here.
It's comforting. It gives us a label we can just confidently print on a metaphorical name tag. But then you encounter a text like the one we're doing a deep dive into today, and suddenly all those labels, your carefully curated personality, your physical body, your treasured memories, they're just brutally exposed as a disguise.
Yeah, it doesn't hold back.
No, it's jarring. The text tells us, in no uncertain terms, that we've been looking for ourselves in the completely wrong place, using the completely wrong tools.
And it really induces a designed identity crisis.
Yeah.
The text doesn't want to help you, adjust the scaffolding of your ego. It's not a self-help book.
Right. It's not going to make you 10% happier or whatever.
Exactly. It's not aimed at making you a slightly more productive or slightly happier version of your current self.
Yeah.
It demands that you tear the scaffolding down completely, like plank by plank, to see what is standing behind it in the empty space.
Which is the mission today. We are unpacking a monumental text from the 8th century called the Vivekachudamani, which translates to the Crest-Jewel of Discrimination. And it was authored by the philosopher sage Adi Shankaracharya.
Right.
The reason this text has survived over a millennium and is still so revered is it's not some abstract academic thought experiment. It is a highly practical, systematic roadmap.
It's a manual.
A manual, yes. For anyone feeling the just crushing exhaustion of modern information overload or just that nagging, persistent 3mm thought of, who am I really beneath all this?
Yeah.
This text offers a way out. It charts a course from existential bondage to total unconditioned freedom, a state it calls Moksha.
And the format itself is deeply intimate. It's composed of 580 Sanskrit verses, structured entirely as a compassionate dialogue between an enlightened master, the guru, and a very earnest, desperate seeker.
Okay.
And it deliberately bypasses empty scholastic debate.
Which is refreshing.
Oh, very. The text is entirely focused on what it calls aparokshanupati, which means direct experiential realization.
Direct experience.
Yeah. It refuses to ask you to believe a theory on blind faith. It's presenting an experiment, and it's demanding you run it on your own consciousness.
Okay, let's unpack this, because an 8th century text promising to solve the fundamental human dilemma through an internal experiment.
It's a big claim.
That is an incredibly bold promise. And the way it opens the argument is it pulls no punches about the sheer statistical improbability of us even contemplating this issue.
Yeah, the opening verses establish a profound sense of urgency. The text points out that simply being born as a human being is incredibly rare in the cosmic scale of things.
Right.
But beyond that, to have a functioning intellect, to actually develop a genuine longing for ultimate spiritual freedom, and then to find a qualified teacher who can guide you.
It's like winning the cosmic lottery.
Exactly. This specific combination of variables is portrayed as something attained only through immense divine grace. It's a massive wake-up call.
Verse 4 takes it to a pretty intense level. It claims that someone who has this rare opportunity, a human life, a sharp mind, and wastes it chasing superficial things, is a slayer of his own soul.
Which is a heavy phrase.
Very heavy. It essentially means we're committing spiritual suicide by focusing on the trivial while ignoring the absolute. But before we get to the actual mechanics of this internal experiment, Shankaracharya takes a very hard, somewhat controversial stance on how we usually try to solve our problems.
Yeah, he aggressively dismantles the concept of action as a cure.
Okay, explain that.
Well, the text states unequivocally that liberation cannot be achieved through any form of action. Now, in the context of the 8th century, action meant performing religious rituals,
Yeah.
obsessively reciting scriptures, making charitable donations, accumulating good deeds.
Right.
None of that, the text argues, can cause liberation.
Wait, so translating that into the modern world, this is like a direct attack on our current hustle culture.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we are conditioned to believe that if we just do more, we will eventually reach a state of peace.
Right, if you just grind hard enough.
Yeah, we try to optimize our morning routines, we crush our career goals, or we even pivot into what you could call like a spiritual hustle.
The spiritual hustle is real.
Right. Doing more yoga poses, meditating for longer stretches on an app, reading 50 self-help books a year. We think freedom is a destination we can sweat our way toward.
And this text drops a bomb on that entire paradigm.
It does.
Verse 11 frames it perfectly. It says, action leads only to the purification of the mind, not to the direct perception of reality. So actions, ethics, disciplines, they're not useless. They are foundational.
They prepare the ground.
Exactly. They prepare the soil. They take a chaotic, noisy mind and they calm it down. But they cannot manufacture liberation, because liberation isn't something you build block by block.
Right.
It's something you simply recognize. You cannot construct what is already intrinsically there.
The analogies used to hammer this home are just brilliant. My favorite is the king analogy.
Oh, that's a great one.
You can stand out in an empty field all day long doing the action of shouting, "I am the king. I am the king."
Yeah.
You can repeat the affirmation 1,000,000 times, but verbal affirmation and physical shouting don't make you a monarch.
No, they don't.
To actually be the king, you have to defeat the enemies occupying your territory and physically claim the treasury.
And the medicine analogy works the exact same way. Verse 62 points out that a deadly disease is not cured merely by uttering the name of a specific medicine.
Just saying penicillin over and over isn't going to help you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to physically swallow it and let it work in your system. In the same way, you're not liberated just by repeating the word Brahman.
Which is the term for the ultimate infinite reality.
Right. Repeating the word is an action. Direct, unfiltered experience is the actual cure.
And there's also the burden analogy. If I'm carrying a 100-pound bag of cement on my shoulders, you can walk over and physically lift it off me.
Yeah.
You know, you can relieve my external burden. A parent can pay off a child's financial debt. But if I'm severely dehydrated or starving, you cannot drink a glass of water for me.
No, I can't.
You cannot eat a meal for me. I have to do the internal ingestion myself. No one can cure my spiritual ignorance on my behalf, no matter how much they love me.
The guru can only point to the water.
Right.
The realization must happen within your own conscious awareness. And since physical actions, moving your body, talking, accumulating things, cannot force this realization, the only tool remaining is relentless, penetrating inquiry.
But you can't just casually start deconstructing the universe while you're distracted by 1,000,000 other things.
No, definitely not.
The text insists that to inquire properly, you need to cultivate a very specific mental state, a toolkit it calls the Sadhana Chatushtaya, or the fourfold qualifications.
Yes.
I want to dig deep into this toolkit because it sounds like the prerequisites for even attempting the experiment.
It is.
So the first qualification is Viveka. This translates to discrimination, but not in the modern negative sense of the word.
Right. It's not about prejudice.
No. It's the ability to discriminate or discern between the eternal reality and the transient, fleeting universe.
It is the cognitive ability to look at phenomena and categorize them accurately. You look at a thought, an emotion, a physical object, or a life circumstance, and you recognize its impermanence.
You see that it had a beginning, it's currently changing, and it will inevitably have an end.
Exactly. That is the transient. Viveka is the active process of separating that transient noise from the silent, unchanging background of reality.
It's essentially the ultimate Bez detector.
Yes.
You point it at a promotion at work or a shiny new car or even a wave of anxiety, and the detector flags it. Warning, this is temporary. This will not provide lasting, unshakable fulfillment.
Right. It spots the illusion.
But having the detector isn't enough on its own, which leads to the second tool, Vairagya.
Right. Vairagya translates to dispassion or detachment. It is the natural consequence of applying that B's detector. If Viveka is the intellectual understanding that an object won't fulfill you, Vairagya is the actual visceral dropping of your attachment to it.
Okay, so it's not just knowing it's temporary. It's not caring that it's temporary.
It's the cessation of craving the enjoyment of results, whether in this life or some imagined afterlife.
And that is the incredibly difficult part.
Oh, yeah.
Because I can intellectually know that arguing with someone on the internet is transient, meaningless noise.
We all know that.
My detector works fine.
Right.
But without vairagya, I still feel the compulsion to jump into the comments section and defend my ego.
Of course.
Dispassion is the actual ability to walk away from the things the detector flags without feeling like you're losing something valuable.
It's dropping the heavy bag of cement and not missing the weight.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Now, the text then bundles the third qualification into 6 inner virtues. These include deep mental calmness, control over the external senses, an ability to withdraw from external props, deep concentration, faith in the teachings, and forbearance.
And forbearance here is specifically defined as enduring afflictions and pain without anxiety or the need to retaliate.
Exactly.
Enduring pain without anxiety. I mean, that alone feels like a superpower in a world where, a delayed text message can trigger a panic attack.
It really is.
And the final tool is mumukshutva, which translates to an intense, burning longing for liberation.
Yes.
It's not a casual, weekend hobbyist interest in spirituality.
No, it's not.
It's a desperate thirst for freedom.
And Shankaracharya places immense emphasis on those specific 2, the dispassion, vairagya, and the intense longing, mumukshutva.
Why those 2 specifically?
Well, verses 29 and 30 contain a stark warning. The text argues that without that burning desire for freedom and genuine detachment from the superficial, all the other virtues, like being incredibly calm, having great focus, or enduring pain, are totally meaningless.
Really, totally meaningless.
Because you can be a very calm, highly focused person who is completely lost in the illusion.
Oh, I see.
You can use your concentration and your calmness to just become a more efficient CEO of a toxic company.
Wow. Yeah. Or a more focused accumulator of wealth.
Exactly. The text compares a calm mind without a genuine desire for ultimate liberation to water in a desert mirage.
Oh, that's striking.
Right. From a distance, a person exhibiting these stoic virtues looks like a spiritual oasis. They appear peaceful. But when you get close, it's an illusion. It won't actually quench the fundamental human thirst for meaning. It's just polished ego.
Just polished ego. Man, that is incisive. So we have the toolkit, we have the bids detector calibrated, we have the dispassion to walk away from the noise, and we have this burning desire to find the truth.
Right.
The text then takes that detector and points it inward. It initiates a systematic deconstruction of what we falsely believe ourselves to be. It calls this the negation of the non-self, or the anat man.
And this is where the text gets surgically precise.
It really does.
It breaks down human experience into 3 distinct bodies, which are further divided into 5 sheaths, or koshas.
Okay, let's go through them.
It's a process of peeling an onion. You start with the most obvious, dense layer, and you work your way down to the subtle core. The outermost layer is the gross body, the Annamaya kosha, which is often translated as the food sheath.
And it calls it the food sheath because it's literally built out of the food we eat. It's sustained by food, and eventually it becomes food for the earth.
Exactly. It's matter.
The text does not sugarcoat the reality of the physical body. It describes it as a sac filled with waste, phlegm, blood, and bone, completely subject to disease, decay, and death.
Yeah, it's not a pleasant description.
It's trying to violently shake us out of our vanity.
It definitely targets our biological narcissism. I mean, we spend billions of dollars globally on anti-aging creams, fitness regimens, cosmetic surgeries, longevity clinics.
Biohacking.
Biohacking, right. We desperately try to freeze the physical form in time. But identifying your core self with the gross body is a mathematical guarantee of suffering, because the body's only promised trajectory is dissolution.
And the analogy Shankaracharya uses here is just haunting. In verse 84, he says that anyone who seeks to realize their true, infinite self while spending all their energy pampering, obsessing over, and identifying with their physical body is like someone trying to cross a raging, violent river by holding onto a crocodile, mistakenly thinking it's a wooden log.
It's such a vivid image.
It is.
Because the crocodile will eventually wake up, roll over, and drag you beneath the surface.
Right.
Relying on the physical body for ultimate security is relying on the very thing that is guaranteed to consume you.
But the text doesn't stop at physical vanity. It moves deeper, killing away the gross body to examine the subtle body.
Yes.
This is composed of 3 more sheaths. The vital energy, so our breath and physiological functions, the mind, which is our stream of thoughts and emotions, and the intellect, our decision-making faculty.
And this is where the deconstruction gets really uncomfortable for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Because most people, if pushed, will admit they aren't just their physical bodies.
Right. They'll say, I am my mind.
Exactly. I am my thoughts, my opinions, my memories, my personality. But the text says, no, that entire internal monologue, your whole personality structure, is just another layer of the crocodile.
It's just the subtle body.
Yes, just the subtle body. And the text points out that the subtle body is what you experience when you dream.
Oh, okay. Talk about the dreaming aspect.
Think about the mechanics of dreaming.
Mm.
Your physical body, the gross body, is paralyzed on a mattress in a dark room. Your physical eyes are shut.
Right.
Yet in the dream, you are running. You are seeing vibrant colors. You're feeling intense fear or joy. You're interacting with other people.
But where is all that coming from?
The subtle body is generating an entire universe out of its own stored impressions and experiencing it as completely real.
Which proves that the mind and the senses are fundamentally separate from the physical flesh. But the text argues that even this dream-generating machine isn't the true self. It compares the subtle body to a carpenter's tool.
I love that one.
A saw can cut wood, but it cannot cut wood on its own.
No, it needs a hand.
It requires a conscious carpenter to wield it. The mind and the intellect are just intricate instruments being used by something else.
They are mechanisms of processing. They are not the conscious observer itself. And if you peel even the subtle machinery away, you arrive at the third body, the causal body. This corresponds to the state of deep, dreamless sleep.
Now, this is a fascinating state to analyze. Because in deep sleep, there is no physical world. There's no dream world. There are no thoughts, no anxieties about tomorrow's meeting, no memories of yesterday.
Right.
The mind and the intellect completely power down into a latent seed-like state. It is total blankness.
Yet when you wake up from that state, you say, I slept deeply. I didn't see anything. I feel rested.
Yeah.
To be able to report that there was nothing, something had to be present to witness the nothingness. You didn't cease to exist. Only your physical and mental processing ceased.
The text uses the analogy of a pond covered entirely by green moss to explain these 5 layers: the physical flesh, the energy, the mind, the intellect, and the causal blankness. If you look at a moss-covered pond, you don't see water. You just see a dense layer of green slime. You might think, there is no water here.
But the moment you take your hand and push the moss aside, the pure, clear, thirst-quenching water is instantly revealed.
It was there the whole time.
The water was always there in its entirety, completely unaffected by the moss. The 5 sheaths cover the true self in the exact same way.
Yeah.
Our continuous obsession with our physical aches, our mental anxieties, our intellectual opinions, it all acts as a dense layer of moss, obscuring the pure consciousness beneath.
It's a masterful process of cornering the ego through elimination.
It really is.
You push aside the physical body, like, I can observe my hand, therefore I am not my hand. You push aside the energy, I can observe my breathing, therefore I am not the breath. You push aside the mind, I can watch a thought of anger rise and fall away, therefore I am not the thought.
You are the watcher.
You push aside the intellect and even the blankness of deep sleep. You just keep stepping back and back until you ask, what is the thing that cannot be pushed aside?
What is the final witness observing the whole show?
Exactly.
Because if I am aware of my body, I cannot be my body. The seer is always definitively distinct from the seen.
Right. But Shankaracharya anticipates the seeker's frustration here.
Oh, he knows exactly what we're going to say.
Right. If this is logically true, if it's so incredibly obvious upon analysis that we're the witness and not this decaying crocodile of a body or this chaotic mind, why do we fall for the illusion so completely?
It's the big question.
Why does it feel so overwhelmingly real? We have to look at the architecture of the trap itself. You know, who built the matrix?
Right.
The text introduces 2 interconnected culprits: Maya, the supreme power of illusion, and the human mind.
Maya is described as an unmanifest, beginningless power. It is the cosmic ability to make the infinite appear as the finite.
And Maya operates dynamically through 3 fundamental qualities, or forces, known as the gunas.
Yeah.
Everything in the observable universe is a mixture of these 3 forces. Understanding how these 3 gunas operate is like getting the source code for human suffering.
It really is. Let's map them out.
Let's do it.
So the first guna is tamas. This is the veiling power. Its nature is heavy, dull, and ignorant. Its primary function is to cover reality, to hide the truth of what is actually there, and to make things appear as something else.
It's the blindfold.
Yes.
It's the cognitive fog that rolls in when we are exhausted or depressed, where we simply cannot see a larger perspective.
Precisely. The second guna is rashas.
Okay.
This is the projecting power.
Yeah.
It's highly active, passionate, restless, and volatile. It is the engine of desire, anger, ambition, and grief.
So if tamas throws a blindfold over your eyes, rajas pushes you onto a treadmill, turns the speed up to max, and tells you to run for your life.
That is exactly it. And the third guna is sattva, which represents purity, balance, and illumination. It is clear, like still water.
Yeah.
It doesn't veil reality, it reflects it, bringing peace and clarity.
Got it. Now, the text states that when tamas and rajas combine within the human organism, they manifest as the mind.
Yes, and verse 169 delivers one of the most uncompromising statements in the entire text. It says, ignorance is nothing other than the mind itself.
Wow.
The mind is the literal architect of worldly bondage. It's not just a participant in your suffering, it is the sole creator of it.
Which creates a terrifying paradox.
How so?
Well, the text says the mind is the architect of our prison, but I am using my mind right now to read this text.
Right?
We're using our intellects to have this conversation. We are using our memories to recall the Sanskrit terms.
Yeah.
If the mind is the prison guard, how can we use it to stage a jailbreak? It feels like trying to use a tiger to hunt itself.
It's funny you say that because Shankaracharya actually uses that exact metaphor in verse 176.
Wait, really?
Yeah. He explicitly warns the seeker that the mind is a ferocious tiger, violently roaming the dense forest of sense objects. If you want liberation, do not wander into that forest.
But he also uses the analogy of the wind and the clouds, which offers a way out of the paradox.
Yes, the wind analogy is key. It explains how the mind can be both the poison and the cure.
Right.
Think about the wind. The wind gathers moisture, forms dense, dark clouds, and blows them across the sky, completely obscuring the sun.
So the wind creates the darkness.
Exactly. But as the weather changes, that exact same wind is what forcefully blows the clouds apart, clearing the sky and revealing the sun that was shining the whole time.
So the mind, when driven by tamas and rajas, ignorance and frantic desire, gathers the clouds of ego and covers our true nature.
Right.
But the mind, when purified and driven by sattva, clarity and inquiry, can scatter those exact same clouds.
Yes. The mechanism of how the mind traps us is best explained by the most famous analogy in all of Vedanta, which is the rope and the snake.
This one is so good.
It perfectly illustrates the deadly combination of tamas and rajas.
Let's map this onto a real-world scenario. Imagine you're walking down a poorly lit dirt path at dusk. You look down, and right by your foot, you see a dark, coiled shape.
Right.
Instantly, your brain registers snake, you freeze, your amygdala fires, your heart rate spikes to 140 beats per minute.
Yeah, full panic.
Adrenaline just floods your bloodstream. You are experiencing genuine, measurable, physiological terror. You might even sprint away in a panic.
Your reaction is completely real.
Yeah.
The sweat on your palms is real. But then, a friend walks up behind you with a bright lantern. The light hits the coiled shape, and you instantly see that it is just a discarded piece of dirty rope.
Let's dissect the mechanics of that terror using the gunas.
Okay.
Tamas, the veiling power of ignorance, is the dusk. It's the poor lighting that hides the reality of the rope. It creates the initial blind spot.
But a blind spot alone doesn't cause a panic attack.
Right.
If you just couldn't see the rope, you'd keep walking.
Yeah, exact.
This is where Rajas, the projecting power, hijacks the system. Rajas takes that blank space created by tamas and actively projects a hallucination onto it.
It paints the picture.
It superimposes the terrifying image of a venomous snake over the harmless rope. Rajas generates the adrenaline, the fear, and the frantic urge to escape.
And we do this constantly in our daily lives.
Yeah.
You get a vaguely worded email from your boss on a Friday afternoon that says, we need to talk on Monday.
Oh, the worst.
Right. Tamas hides the reality that it could just be about a new project or a routine update. Rajas kicks in and projects a terrifying snake. I am getting fired. I won't be able to pay my mortgage. I am going to lose my house.
Yeah, spiraling.
And you spend the entire weekend in a state of physiological stress fighting a phantom snake.
And then Monday morning arrives, the lantern of knowledge is brought into the room, and the boss asks you to approve a budget report.
And the snake vanishes instantly. But notice, the snake didn't slither out the door.
No.
It didn't die. It simply ceased to exist because it never had any independent reality to begin with.
It was purely a projection of the mind.
Shankaracharya applies this exact mechanism to our entire existential reality. The harmless rope is our true self, pure, infinite, unthreatened consciousness.
Right.
Tamas veils this truth from us. Rajas then projects the hallucination of a fragile, vulnerable ego, trapped inside a decaying physical body, constantly threatened by the world, terrified of death, and frantically chasing temporary pleasures.
We live our entire lives suffering from the venom of a snake that isn't even there.
It's wild to think about.
If the mind is the projector and the suffering ego is the projected movie on the screen, the ultimate goal isn't to fight the villains in the movie.
Right.
The goal is to step out of the theater entirely. You have to realize you are the screen upon which the movie is playing.
This realization is captured in the ultimate foundational equation of Vedanta, Tattvamasi, which translates to thou art that. This is the massive philosophical pivot of the Vivekachudamani. We transition from ruthlessly deconstructing the illusion to establishing the absolute ultimate reality. The text defines the supreme self, the Atman, as the silent witness. Eternal, beginningless, completely untouched by the dramatic fluctuations of the mind, shining brilliantly in what it calls the cave of the intellect.
But understanding the equation, thou art, that requires a specific method of interpretation.
Because if you read it literally, it seems like a glaring contradiction.
Exactly. Thou represents the individual soul, jiva. The individual is limited in knowledge, housed in a fragile physical body, prone to sickness, and subject to intense joy and deep sorrow.
And that represents Brahman, the supreme, infinite, omniscient, omnipotent reality that sustains the entire cosmos.
Right.
Suggesting that the limited individual is exactly the same as the infinite cosmos sounds absurd on its face.
It really does.
It's like pointing to a tiny spark from a campfire and saying, this spark is the exact same thing as a raging 1,000-acre forest fire.
Right. If you judge them by their literal external attributes, they are complete opposites. A firefly is not the sun. A drop of water is not the ocean.
Right.
The text explicitly warns against this literal interpretation. It teaches us to use implied meaning. To solve the equation, we have to strip away the contradictory, limiting attributes of both sides to discover the shared underlying essence.
It uses the clay and the pot analogy to demonstrate how we are tricked by attributes. Imagine a potter takes a lump of clay and shapes it into a beautiful round pot. We look at it and say, that is a pot. Right. It has a specific name, it has a specific form, it's round, it has a handle, it has a specific function, it can hold water. Those are its limiting attributes.
But fundamentally, what is it? If you strip away the name pot and the temporary round form, what remains? It is nothing but clay.
Just clay.
If you accidentally drop it and shatter it into 100 pieces, the pot is destroyed, but the clay remains completely untouched. Before it was foamed on the wheel, it was clay. While it holds water, it is clay. After it is broken, it is clay. The name and the form are just temporary conceptual overlays.
The only enduring reality is the clay itself.
Exactly.
The text argues that the entire universe, with its billions of galaxies, its complex ecosystems, and all of our individual separate egos, is just Brahman with temporary names and forms overlaid onto it.
Clay.
But my absolute favorite analogy for how this maps to human consciousness is the sun in the jar.
Oh, that one is beautiful. It perfectly illustrates the relationship between the infinite self and the limited ego. Walk us through the setup.
Okay, imagine you take a clay jar, fill it with water, and set it on the ground outside on a bright afternoon. The sun is blazing in the sky. If you look into the jar, you will see a perfect miniature reflection of the sun on the surface of the water.
Right.
Now, an ignorant person walks up, points at the reflection in the jar, and declares, look, I have captured the sun. It is very small. It is trapped inside this clay jar. And look, when the wind blows and the water ripples, the sun trembles and distorts. The fool fundamentally mistakes the reflection for the actual sun.
And how does the wise person perceive the exact same scene?
The wise person looks at the jar, the water, and the reflection, but they don't fixate on them. They look past the clay boundaries of the jar, they look past the turbulent water, and they look up into the vast sky. They see the actual sun, massive, stationary, and completely unaffected by the wind or the water. And they realize that this one sun in the sky is simultaneously illuminating the jar, the water, and creating the reflection.
This is a profound map of our psychological reality. The clay jar is our physical body, the gross sheath. The water inside the jar is our mind and intellect, the subtle sheath.
And the reflection.
The reflection of the sun shimmering on the water is our ego, the I sense. We spend our lives believing we are this tiny reflection.
Yeah.
When the water of the mind is disturbed by anxiety or anger, the reflection distorts and we cry, I am broken, I am suffering.
Which means we spend decades going to therapy, reading books, and changing jobs, all in an attempt to perfectly still the water in the jar so the reflection looks nice and pristine.
Exactly. We are constantly trying to optimize the puddle.
Optimizing the puddle.
All the while, we completely ignore the blazing infinite sun in the sky that is our actual true source. We are the sun. mourning the distortions of a reflection in a temporary puddle.
Which brings us directly back to solving the thou art that equation. The text uses the king and the soldier analogy to show how to strip away the limiting adjuncts.
Right.
A king possesses a vast kingdom, commands a massive army, wears a jeweled crown, sits on a throne. A soldier holds a wooden shield, carries a sword, and obeys orders. These are their temporary roles, their props.
They're completely unequal in power and status based on those props.
Right. But if you remove the kingdom, the army, and the crown from the king, and you remove the shield, the sword, and the uniform from the soldier, what are you left with? You've removed the contradictory attributes. What remains in both cases is simply pure, undifferentiated human consciousness.
Strip away the cosmic, universe-creating power of the supreme Brahman, and strip away the tiny, anxious, physical body and mind of the individual ego, and the underlying essence in both is pure, limitless awareness.
That is how the spark is the fire.
Exactly. That is how thou equals that.
Intellectually grasping this is a massive breakthrough. You realize, aha, I am the clay, not the pot. I am the sun, not the reflection.
It's a huge step.
But I have to be brutally honest here.
Go for it.
Understanding this while sitting quietly, reading a beautiful 8th century philosophy text is one thing. It makes perfect logical sense. But it is an entirely different reality when you close the book, drive to work, and someone abruptly cuts you off in traffic, almost causing a crash.
Oh, yeah.
Or your boss unfairly berates you in a meeting. In that moment, the water in the jar violently sloshes around, the reflection distorts, and the ego immediately screams, I am under attack.
The force.
The intellectual understanding vanishes, and you are instantly sucked right back into believing you are the snake reacting to a fandom threat.
And Shankaracharya completely anticipates this exact failure.
He does.
Oh, yeah. He doesn't just hand you the philosophy and walk away. He addresses the brutal reality of psychological habit. This brings us to the most pragmatic and honestly the most difficult section of the Vivekachudamani, which is the daily practice.
The text acknowledges that even after the truth is known intellectually, there is a massive obstacle remaining. It calls them vasanas, deeply grooved, beginningless impressions and habits stored in the mind.
Right, the programming.
These vasanas constantly assert the old narrative. I am the doer of actions. I am the experiencer of pain. The text likens these habits to a heavy iron chain, tying us to the cycle of suffering.
Because you cannot just think your way out of a lifelong habit in one afternoon. The text warns that for a spiritual seeker who has understood the truth, the greatest enemy is inadvertence, carelessness, a lapse in vigilance.
Yeah.
In fact, it states that for a seeker, inadvertence is literal death. You cannot afford to let your guard down, not even for a fraction of a second.
The analogy he uses for this lapse in attention is terrifyingly relatable. It's the dropped ball.
Yes.
Verse 325 says that if the mind swerves even slightly outward, away from the contemplation of the self and toward a sense object, it falls precipitously. It falls just as a play ball dropped carelessly on the top of a flight of stairs tumbles violently from step to step all the way to the bottom.
One moment of distraction. You let your mind dwell on a petty grievance or a fantasy about buying a new luxury item.
Right.
That single thought fuels a latent desire. The desire creates an agitation that forces you to act. The action creates a new impression in the mind, which generates more thoughts. You are instantly caught in the gravitational pull of the ego, bouncing violently down the stairs into anxiety, drama, and suffering.
He compares the ego to a three-headed serpent guarding the ultimate treasure of Brahman.
The three heads being the three gunas, tamas, rajas, and sattva.
Right, and you have to actively cut off all three heads with the sword of realization. You can't just pacify the snake.
No, you can't.
And he warns that if you entertain thoughts of worldly objects, you are actively resurrecting the ego. He says, thinking about sense objects waters the ego like water revives a withered lime tree. You keep bringing the villain back to life.
The only way to permanently dismantle this cycle is through continuous, unbroken practice and vigilance.
And the text uses the beautiful analogy of sandalwood to explain this process of purification.
I love this one.
Imagine you have a highly fragrant piece of premium sandalwood, but it has been sitting in a puddle of stagnant, muddy water for months. When you take it out, it smells terrible. It smells like foul dirt and decay.
Naturally.
But the innate divine fragrance of the sandalwood hasn't actually been destroyed. It's just heavily masked by the external dirt. So how do you get it back? You can't just look at it and wish it smelled better. You have to physically take it and rub it against a hard surface.
Right.
The intense friction gradually scrapes away the layers of mud and rot. As the external dirt is removed by friction, the natural, sweet fragrance spontaneously emerges.
The true fragrance of the self is covered by the foul dirt of our endless desires and anxieties. It only shines forth when that psychological dirt is violently rubbed away by the continuous friction of wisdom, self-inquiry, and meditation.
See, this level of practice sounds incredibly intense. It demands nonstop, absolute vigilance. You have to stand at the top of the stairs, holding the ball, never letting your attention slip for a single second.
It's a lot.
My immediate pushback is this even remotely compatible with modern life? Can someone have a demanding corporate job, raise a family, pay a mortgage, and maintain this state? Or is this text basically saying, if you want this, quit your job and go sit in a cave in the Himalayas?
It's a crucial question, because if the answer is go to a cave, the text is useless for 99% of humanity.
Exactly.
But Shankaracharya does not demand a physical retreat from the world. The culmination of this text points toward a state known as Jivan Mukti, which translates to liberation while living.
So it is possible to achieve this while still interacting with the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A Jivan Mukta, a liberated person, still has a physical body. They still eat, they still sleep, they still interact with society. They might even still run a business. But the fundamental geometry of their internal world has shifted.
How so?
They operate from a state of ultimate flow and radical detachment.
Let's connect that back to our analogies. They are acting, they're moving through the world, but they've dropped the heavy armor of the doer. They no longer identify with the reflection in the jar.
Precisely. They have permanently realized they are the sun in the sky. When the water in the jar ripples, when a business deal falls through, or the body gets sick, they observe the rippling reflection without any panic.
Right, they don't say, I am sick.
They don't claim, I am failing, I am suffering. They watch their own body and mind operate the way you and I might watch a character in a movie.
Wow.
They act out of pure spontaneity, compassion, and appropriateness to the moment without accumulating any new psychological baggage.
Right.
The mind becomes crystal clear, perfectly reflecting the reality of the moment without distortion.
That is an absolutely phenomenal place to land, and it brings the massive promise of this text into sharp focus.
It really does.
We've covered incredible ground today. We started by confronting the sheer rarity of this quest, realizing we cannot just hustle or action our way to ultimate freedom.
Right.
We unpacked the seeker's toolkit, calibrating our internal bees detector to separate the eternal from the transient.
We systematically peeled away the layers of the false self, the 5 sheaths, recognizing that identifying with the decaying physical body is like holding onto a crocodile in a raging river.
We exposed the exact mechanics of how the mind traps us, using the projecting power of the gunas to hallucinate a terrifying snake over a harmless rope. We solved the ultimate equation of thou art, that stripping away the temporary forms to realize we are the underlying clay, the infinite sun in the sky, and not just the fragile reflection trapped in a jar of water.
Yeah.
And we faced the heart reality that maintaining this realization requires the relentless friction of daily practice to avoid dropping the ball down the stairs of our old habits.
It is a complete, unsparing dismantling of our false reality. The Vivekachudamani doesn't just offer philosophy, it offers an entirely new way to perceive existence.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave the listener with something to chew on, a final thought experiment based on what we've discussed, something to actually apply tonight.
Let's do it. Let's revisit the causal body and the state of deep, dreamless sleep.
Okay.
The text makes a profound point. Every single night, when you fall into deep sleep, the ego completely dissolves. The mind shuts down its frantic projecting. The physical body vanishes from your awareness.
Right.
And in that state, devoid of all your achievements, anxieties, and relationships, you experience a state of pure, untroubled rest. This proves mathematically that the self is naturally peaceful and whole when the mind finally stops talking.
That blankness isn't an empty void. It's the absence of the noise that causes our suffering.
So here's a provocative thought for the listener to take with them. Tonight, as you are lying in bed, right on the precipice of falling asleep, try to expend your awareness. Try to catch the exact, precise moment. All your professional titles, your financial anxieties, your childhood memories, and even your very name vanishes into the dark.
Oh, wow.
If you, as an ego, completely disappear every single night into this causal void, and yet you still exist to wake up the next morning and say, I slept well,
Yeah.
who is the you that remains awake in the dark when the mind goes to sleep? Meditate on that.
Who remains awake in the dark? That is a haunting, brilliant question. It brings us right back to the central crisis of identity we started with.
Exactly.
The next time you feel the urge to meticulously curate your life or defend your ego or panic over a ripple in the water, pause. Ask yourself, am I identifying with the eternal sun, or am I just hypnotized once again by the reflection in the jar?